What's up, everybody? Paul here from the Hoops Crew, and it is a brand new episode of the Paul James Show tonight, reviewing the round 3 loss to the Brisbane Lions and everything else that has played out this round. We're all very disappointed with where things are currently at for the Cats. We are 1 win and 2 losses with some tough-ish games to come. Maybe, not that we want to get too ahead of our skis here, skis being the appropriate thing considering the opposition. Not that we want to get too ahead of our skis here with a game against the Ds, but you would like to think we can square the ledger this week and then hopefully gain some momentum going forward. Let's quickly shout out here as we start the show, Brendan's comment from about half an hour before the show started, the Mitch Hardy show. We probably need to start thinking about ways to get him back on the list because he will help our midfield unit who is struggling at the moment. That's about the only acknowledgement I'm going to give Mitch Hardy for a while. There's a lot to discuss tonight. It's a strange old spot that we're in right now where we've played some really good football, but not full 4 quarters of football, and that's left us 1 and 2 and in a pretty strange sort of a spot. I know there are lots of very heated people out there with lots of thoughts around the Cats right now and what's been going on and why we've kind of gone on to lose these last 2 matches. Keen to free Mitch Nevitt. That's right, uncage him. I actually, for a second, thought you were going to put Mitch Hardy in there. That had me going. It's a strange old spot that we're in, and we need to find a way to dig our way out of the hole. I know there are lots of thoughts from the community, so please utilize that comment section tonight while you're watching live, and also after the fact if you're watching as well. We'd love to hear what you've got to say about all things Geelong and the broader competition. Tonight's agenda, we are going to review the Geelong and Brisbane game, the good, the bad, the ugly. Of course, I already have a match review video that is live on the YouTube channel. Please check that one out. But I'm hoping to fold some of your comments into our conversation tonight and really pick apart every aspect of that game. We'll go around the grounds and talk about all the matches that have been played out, including the West Coast and Fremantle game that is live as we speak. We'll have Nuff of the Week. That is pre-recorded and that is ready to unleash. If you've seen my match review, you might have kind of cottoned onto a topic that particularly frustrated me. That is the subject tonight. And then we'll wrap things up with some Q&A. All right. Let's get into proceedings here by first beginning with the Geelong and Brisbane result. The Cats went down 9-7-61 to Brisbane's 10-10-70. We led by as much as 32 points late in the second quarter. They did peg one back really, really late there through Will Ashcroft. But it was from that point on where the game just shifted completely. You can see the key ball winners and kind of, I guess, goal kickers as well. It was a very balanced game from both teams. Paddy Dangerfield was the only multiple goal scorer with 2 goals, 1. Ollie Dempsey with 1 goal, 1. Jeremy Cameron with a goal. A plethora of others with singles as well. Similar story for the Lions where we've got Rayner, Neville and Hipwood here, but every single goal kicker for Brisbane kicked a single goal. On the disposal front, Brisbane had a lot of it, especially their key players at the coalface. Ashcroft with 33, McCluggage with 30, Zorko with 28. Our best was Max Holmes with 29, Bailey Smith with 25, and Graham Myers with 22. But as I spoke about in the match review video that I've put together, the Smith and Myers numbers were not the most effective 25 and 22 disposals I've ever seen from both of those players, if I'm being perfectly honest. They were a bit lacking in a few areas. Brian, with a few good link-up plays at different stages. But, I wasn't overly impressed with really what either of them contributed, despite the fact their numbers were pretty solid. Let's talk about some of the key details from this game, though. As I think pretty much everyone had expected. In fact, I think most of us were shocked when he was selected. Tom Stewart was a laid out. Mark O'Connor coming in to act as the sub there. Chris Scott has been very public both pre-game and post that apparently Tom Stewart was incredibly close and they wouldn't have put him on the plane if they didn't think he was going to be really, really close to getting up, and has basically made it pretty clear that he'll be back in time for the game against the Ds. And certainly the way we're performing at the moment, we could do with Tom Stewart out there. We scored only 13 points in that second half. It was really, really disappointing. We kicked 2 goals, 1 in the second half. They're going from 7-6 to 9-7. We just couldn't get the ball forward of centre. Hell, a bit like the St Kilda game in the first half, a bit like the Fremantle game in the third quarter. We just couldn't get hands on the ball. And it goes to one of the other big, I guess, conversation points that I discussed during the match review video. Again, already live on the YouTube channel. Please check that one out after this show if you haven't already. My big concern is our inability to halt a team's momentum. When Brisbane, St Kilda, Fremantle, whoever it is potentially in the future, gets on a bit of a roll, we can't seem to pull the handbrake until we get to the end of a quarter. And we did kind of do that last night in the game against Brisbane. The third quarter got out of hand. And then we pulled things back nicely in the final quarter. We didn't quite do enough. They ultimately still won the final term, but it was a pretty negligible sort of margin in the final term there. But the damage was already done by the third. They managed to go from, as I mentioned, 32 points down late in the second to a point in front by three-quarter time. It's just inexcusable from a Geelong team who you want to believe will be featuring at the very, very pointy end of the finals. Now, one thing I will say, and I'm kind of jumping the gun a little bit here, but I have seen a lot of commentary out there across our comment sections from Postgame Live to my match review to social media as well. There's a lot of people who have been very quick to jump off the Cats here. Let's please not lose sight of the fact that it is round 3. And we do have some really young players as well who are developing and learning their craft. And you're going to get ups and downs from a Jai Clark or a Connor O'Sullivan. Not that he's had any downs so far. He's been absolutely exceptional. We're going to see, Ted Closey as well. We're going to see players who, as they continue to develop at the AFL level, are going to have good days and bad days. What we can't have are some of our key players, especially some of our key position players, Sam De Koning, Shannon Neal, Jeremy Cameron. We can't continue to have down days like they've had. Sam De Koning obviously came out the blocks exceptionally well in round 1, but then has been comprehensively beaten in the matchup against Rowan Marshall, and again, Darcy fought in consecutive weeks. Obviously, he's in the process of signing a contract, and that's fantastic, and I absolutely want to have Sam De Koning on our list well into the future, but we need a bit more from him out of the middle. It feels like Mark Blitzarves has been more effective as a ruckman than he has of late. Jeremy Cameron is starting the season pretty horribly out of form. I know he kicked 4 goals in the game against Fremantle. 3 of those, I would say, were all junk time goals. And yeah, he's been relatively ineffective since. I know he had to kind of go chasing the ball in the St Kilda match just to try and get into the play, and did a pretty good job in that respect. But we need him kicking goals, and I've seen the theory kicked around that maybe we need to drop him in the goal square and make him really dangerous out of that point. I can actually see some merit in that. I'm keen to see how that could potentially work out for us. We've still got plenty of players who can get up the field. Shannon Neal is going to be able to utilize that height, and I don't think has too many problems with the tank getting up and down the ground. And then, of course, you've got Ollie Henry, you've got Patrick Dangerfield, you've got the Smalls that are all coming out of that forward line as well. I reckon let's take Jezza deep and stress the likes of Jake Lever or Stephen May next week. Really put them under pressure with his speed, his marking ability, and his just freaky scramble skills for someone of his height. I'd like to see us explore that possibility. Shannon Neal, look, he kind of tweaked an ankle early and didn't look 100% for the rest of the game. Now, I will always say that if you step out over the white line, you are fair game, and so he deserves to be criticised, I still think, for a pretty lackluster performance. But he was labouring. I think that was pretty clear that he was labouring. Sam De Koning potentially as well with a little niggle during the pre-game, if I think it was him that I saw that was kind of in a bit of trouble early on. This is during the warm-up. Oh, no, sorry, that was Jack Henry. Scratch that. Jack Henry performed really, really well. Again, some other talking points from the game. Kai Lohmann, ankle injury. He just returned. He's potentially going to have some downtime. They subbed him really, really quickly, so they clearly knew he was no good for the rest of the game from that point. Bruce Neville, who came in on as the sub, instantly effective. Goal assist with his first kick in AFL football, a goal with his second, an exceptional goal at that. He started off really, really well for the Brisbane Football Club. Zach Guthrie is currently leading our YouTube poll for the Roll of Honour with 57% of the vote. As of when we put together our show notes tonight, he was fantastic. Really, really happy with the output from Zach Guthrie. And there was several forward thrusts from Brisbane where he, was kind of shoved out of the play, but managed to hold his ground enough to be able to either impact the ball or take the mark. There were several scenarios where he backed into the contest, reefed it with one hand back down to himself to take the mark. He was absolutely fantastic. And I think without him, Thank you for clarifying, Jake, with Bruce. I hadn't seen him before. And the way the fuss was it must be his first for the year. The way the fuss was made about him, you'd think it was his debut. Thank you for clarifying that. Without him and Jack Henry, I think there could have been some real problems. And actually Connor O'Sullivan for that on that matter as well, who absolutely, I made it really clear during my preview that I do not rate Eric Hipwood. And Eric Hipwood got one opportunistic goal, but didn't really do a lot for the game. And I really lay a lot of that down to Connor O'Sullivan, who was absolutely fantastic on him, especially in the second half when there was a few times where it was him one-on-one where Hipwood had managed to isolate him and he won the contest. He broke even. He knocked the ball down, would chase it and follow up. He was absolutely sensational as a defender. Thanks, 100 games, 100 days. I've really not been paying attention. I didn't see that bloke at all last year. And you would think you would with a hairdo like that. It's a pretty cool haircut he's rocking at the moment, but I blinked and missed him, I think. Thank you, both Jackie and 100 Games, 100 Days, for that little bit of extra context there. I'm a moron. So, yeah, between, if it wasn't for Zach Guthrie, for Jack Henry and Connor O'Sullivan, I think we could have been in pretty dire straits. And it's an ongoing concern. Our defenders are doing a great job. They are not being supported very well by our midfield unit, who just at different points of the game cannot get their hands on it. I think it was a foolish decision on the coaching department to take Tom Atkins off Neil, who had been absolutely completely squashed by Atkins in the first half. And then he just worked his way into the game. And when the other midfielders are, Brisbane are doing a pretty good job lifting, when Ashcroft and McCluggage and some of the other guys, Zorko, they're lifting, they're trying to do what they can to offset the fact that Neil has been taken out of the game. You need to just keep Lachie Neale squashed. You need to keep him down, because if he gets added to that mix, it gets really ugly, and it did. And they really started to consistently win possession. He was starting to really work his way into the game in the second half. All credit to Lachie Neale, who is an exceptional player. But I think Tom Atkins should have remained there, and that would have potentially been the difference in the game in the end. Because Lachie Neale, really worked his way into it and started to become quite potent. Another little interesting thing, I guess, going into next week's game against the D's, Sean Manor was best of field in the VFL win, or at least arguably best of field. We can talk a little bit about some of those VFL numbers shortly. Tom, as I mentioned before, Tom Stewart is supposedly going to be right for selection. So our team is going to get stronger. There'll be questions, of course, about who needs to come out for both of those players. And I'm sure the comments will have their theories, assuming, and we'll work on the assumption here, that both of those players return. I am keen to see who you think will have to make way for those players. So, the result sucks. We are 1-2. Now, I do not want to throw the baby out with the bathwater like I think a few have. And I'm not saying necessarily people within our community, but I've seen a little bit on social media of a bit of the cats are done sort of mentality. It's round 3, guys. And they are actually, for the most part, playing really good football. It's just when they're having these lapses that there's a problem. And so I think there's a bit of an honest conversation needs to be had about how and why this is happening. And I think an honest conversation even within the coaching department, that when you see that a team has kicked 2 or 3 in a row, that you flick the switch then. Don't wait until the end of the quarter. Don't trust your system. Don't be so committed to the system that you can't go, all right, maybe we need to toss danger in there just to, break this up. Maybe we need to toss Jeremy Cameron deep so that when the ball gets in there, it's a harder matchup. Those sorts of maneuvers, I think, can do a bit to reverse that momentum. We had it for the whole first half of the game, and even for patches early in the final quarter, but for far too long, we let the opposition, it was the same in the St Kilda game, have their way with us, and we didn't do anything to change it. At least nothing overly visible. So I think there's a few big decisions that need to be made during the quarter to change things up. The coaching department, I hope, has a bit of a look at the way they are, I guess, assessing these things. I don't think there's anything I don't have scathing criticisms, but I think they need to be more willing to flick the switch a bit earlier. Some comments here. Jackie's right. Bit hard to be done when we're 30 points up. They need to look at the way that they are managing the game, but you don't get 30 points up in front of the reigning premier if you're not doing a lot of things right. So they've just got to rough out some edges and they'll be fine. 100 games, 100 days. Just catching up on 2x speed as I missed the start. Thanks. He rocked some different hairdos. I think he had dreadlocks last year. Oh, all right. He's keeping me on my toes. Oh, do I remember a dreadlock player? I don't know. Did he have dreads last year? I know he looks slightly different. He's very much a cult hero. Yes, even I probably should have cottoned on the fact that they had the whole boo cheer going every time he got the ball. You don't earn that when you've not had a kick of the Sharon before. So more fool me. Sorry about that, everyone. All right, let's move across to around the grounds, and we'll talk about some of the other games that have occurred this round, including one that is rapidly coming to an end as we speak. We'll take a look now at the results from round 3. Essendon, disappointingly, got the points against the Port Adelaide Football Club there. Not crazy about it because I don't rate the Bombers. I continue to not rate the Bombers, and Ben was bloody right this time. Carlton, the Dogs got the points there. Thankfully, for my tips, I say this all through the lens of my tips. Gold Coast continuing to prove me right. I rate this team. They are going to go places this year. They got the 4 points against the D's. The Saints beat the Tigers. The Hawks beat the Giants in a pretty awesome game to watch, considering how blustery and awful the conditions were at UTAS. Of course, we've discussed it already. Brisbane beat the Cats. Adelaide got the job done against North Melbourne. And as we speak, I will flick over here to some live scores where we can see that the Dockers are pretty comfortably in front, going to get their first win of the season. 14-6-100, leading the Eagles 9-7-61. That game is absolutely on toast now. We've got less than 5 minutes to go in the match. Yeah, about what you'd expect, honestly, because the Eagles have been slumming it for a couple of years now and are continuing to rebuild. The Dockers should be playing like a top 8 team, and obviously have started, with a 0-2 scoreline. They're going to start to make some inroads with this win here. Some comments here from Graham. Cast our minds to 2022, and we're in a simple position after 3 games, and it took us a while to get going. It did. Now, I do think our age profile is a bit different now. I think we had a lot of players who were just ready and raring to go, whereas now we've got some development that still needs to go on at the same time. So I don't know if you're comparing them, and obviously we've got the hindsight of knowing that we won the premiership that year, but I would say the 1-2 scoreline of 2022 was a bit better than the 1-2 of this year. But that's when you look at it in isolation of a single season. I think what we're managing to achieve so far, doing some great things against some really great teams, whilst continuing to blood these young guys and get them experience, I think is exceptional. We're playing for the now, and we're setting ourselves up for the next 3 to 5 years as well. I'm stoked with where we're at. I know the 1-2 scoreline sucks, but I'm pretty happy with where we're at. I can't remember a recent time where we've played so many youngsters and players in different positions, yet are still competitive. Absolutely. 100 games, 100 days. Obviously, what I was just talking about there, it's awesome, I think, where we're at, both in terms of a playing for the now and a playing for the future thing. It's why these other clubs get so jealous of what we do, because we managed to do it so bloody well. The challenge is the Cats at times look really flat, not dangerous at all, unable to break through defensive walls or win the ball. Yeah, I think that's the main thing is kind of, I think, your last point, the winning the ball. We just get completely overwhelmed at the clearance at times. We cannot arrest that momentum. It is absolutely, for want of I'm being a bit punny here considering your surname, it is infuriating because it's a pattern that just keeps occurring. So let's flick back to the games itself and talk about some of the key notes from each of these games. Essendon has snapped an 8-game losing streak against Port by winning there by 12 points at Marvel. The Carlton season, it's going from bad to worse. They are now 0-3 after being premiership favourites in the eyes of some people going into the season. The wheels are absolutely falling off pretty early. They cannot afford too many more losses before some big questions start to get asked of Michael Voss and his team. Gold Coast smashed the D's, and hopefully that lack of form for Melbourne continues into next week. Ben's asked the question, is the Melbourne era over and have the Suns finally arrived? Yes, I think to both. But the Suns, I tipped him for the top 8. I've been tipping him for the top 8 for years. You look at that list, you look at that 23 that they're playing, and it is such a complete starting 23. As 100 games, 100 days mentions, Jed Walters is an absolute monstrosity. He is huge, that kid. And yeah, I think they're really going to go places, assuming some of their key players' bodies can hold up. And they've obviously had an ACL recently hit the club. As long as their players' bodies can continue to hold up, they're going to go places this year, and then certainly be really dangerous for the next few. Dimmer Hardwick is continuing to prove himself to be an elite AFL coach. As we move on, so St Kilda, they defeated the Tigers by 82 points. They've gotten a massive reality check now off the back of obviously an upset win in round 1 against the Blues that is week by week looking less and less significant. They got annihilated by those Saints to the tune of 82 points. I mentioned the Hawks got the win against the Giants, a 12-point win there at Utah's. Ben reckons that they are the undeniable premiership favourites. I will not go that far yet. I think they're second behind the Lions, who are just building into that season so nicely. They are probably still, they've not hit fifth gear yet. And that's huge for them. Like they didn't play a whole half of football against us and got the win in pretty horrible conditions at that. So I rate the Lions. They are currently my premiership favourites, but the Hawks are smashing that door down right now. And I think we're getting very close to a point where maybe I need to change my tone a little bit. There's no premiership hangover for the Lions. They are absolutely on fire early. And the Crows are looking pretty dangerous. What I will say, and I mentioned this last week when we were talking about the game against the Bombers, they are still conceding a lot against them. Let me bring up the scoreline from today's match. Where is it? Oh, I've just scrolled to round 2 by mistake. Round 3, 17-12, 114 to 12-6, 78. I would say this is a North Melbourne team who's been bottom 4 for the majority of the last 10 years, really. But certainly the majority of the last 5. And are developing and have a great coach at the helm. If you want to be a serious contender, you're probably on your home deck when the North have had to travel interstate to come and see you. You probably need to win by more than 36 points, and you need to. And it's not because 114 is a poor score. It's great in the current game, but I think you need to limit North Melbourne a little bit more than what you did. They are getting there. They are getting really close. But again, the game against Essendon really showed where they won by 61 points, but it was 161 to 100. Their defensive, like this feels like a Crows team from that 2016 period. I think it was 2016 where there was that final against the Dogs, and it was just a shootout. And Adelaide had a whole bunch of matchups like that where it was just no real defensive mechanisms in place. It was just surge football, pile on the goals, but then they were getting scored against pretty heavily as well. I think that's an area that still needs to be worked on here. I don't think it's the same model that they're implementing, but the results are kind of similar at the moment. So if I'm Adelaide, what I really want to see is a bit more defensive football. Maybe they score a couple less goals as a result, but what it can do for your premiership credentials by limiting an opposition more, I think is even more important at this early stage of the season. And not to mention not just credentials, but your premiership chances. And then obviously we've spoken about the Fremantle and West Coast game, which is I dubbed the Western Smash when I couldn't think of the name last week. We're going to continue to stick with that. That game's cooked. That's over now. Let me have a bit of look at some final scores because I presume that final siren has sounded. It is complete. We have the Eagles 10-8-68 going down to the Dockers 15-16, 106. The big goal scorers in that case are Jai Amos with 4, Josh Tracy with 3, and then a lot of doubles and singles from that point on across both teams. All right, let us continue on with the show. We had 2 teams obviously who had a bye this week. That is Collingwood and Sydney. We'll see them back at it next week. But importantly for the VFL, there are some notes that we want to discuss here as well. We want to talk a little bit about Sean Manor and obviously the BOG performance that he had. He got 23 disposals and 3 goals in a 30-point win against the Northern Bull Ants, who Ben, rightly sent me a text during the game and said, Paul, you jinxed it. Like, the Bull Ants are a joke of a football club these days, but they were in front on a couple of occasions, right up until, even in the third quarter. We let them in and we gave them a chance and nearly blew it as a result. We end up winning by 30 points. We've basically got a decent percentage boost out of the game in the end, but really it should have been a lot worse. George Stevens with 34 disposals continues to push for an opportunity at the senior level. He's looking really, really good. Patrick Rechko with 1 goal and 18 disposals is looking sharp. An interesting one here is Reece Stanley with 39 hitouts and 2 goals. He is showing people that he is not done. And considering that the Sam De Koning thing I mentioned before is not necessarily working as well as we would like at this stage, he's got to start coming into calculations pretty soon, I think. He maybe wouldn't have been appropriate for the conditions in Brisbane. But I think in a game against Max Gawn, where he's actually got a pretty good record, obviously there's been, Max Gawn's kicked a goal after the siren against us and those sort of things. He's had 2 opportunities after the siren, missed 1 and kicked 1. But I reckon might be worthwhile considering that Reece Stanley comes in, not at the expense of a Sam De Koning or a Mark Blitzerhus, but I'm wondering if he's a worthwhile addition to the lineup for next week. Jay Polkinghorne was pretty quiet for the most part. 8 disposals, 1 goal, but he's one to watch as our top pick in the draft. He did look sorry and sore. He might need a bit of a rest. For a second, I thought you were telling me to give him a rest. Maybe he does need a bit of a break. I certainly remember, was it last year, the year before, where Sam kind of was getting banged up pretty regularly at the beginning of the season and then eventually had a long-term injury there. Maybe it was even 2023. I want to protect Sam where we can, and maybe this is a good opportunity to do so. Finally, when it comes to the VFL, Jack Martin, again, did not play. I'm not exactly sure where he's at because I know all the talk early on was about maybe a month in the VFL and then start to really explore the opportunities to debut for the Cats from there. That has not happened as of yet, so I'm really interested to see how that one continues to develop. All right, let me screen share with you again. We'll bring up the AFL ladder and look at how things stand now that game is complete. Boom. Here we are. The Hawks lead it. Now, they've obviously played one more game than pretty much everyone else. Well, sorry, not pretty much, than everyone else. They're going into a bye, though, this week. They have 4 from 4 with a decent percentage early on in the season. The Crows will have the opportunity to skip to top of the ladder if they can get the win this week. Same with Brisbane. They've got the opportunity to pile up the ladder as well. Gold Coast, 2 wins from 2 games. The Giants, like the Pies, Saints, Bulldogs, there we are, leading the charge of all the teams who have only got the 1 win so far. Fortunately, it's been such a strange start to the season so far in terms of some results that we are, it's round 3. We've spoken about this a few times. You cannot put a line through any team this early on in the season except perhaps the Eagles and the Tigers. And maybe the Ds. But actually, this can't be up to date because it doesn't have the Fremantle win. But, I think we're in a spot where we can continue. Oh, there we go. And Blues, Port and Bombers. We might have to do a little assessment sometime soon and start maybe doing some power rankings or something like that sometime soon. We'll see how we go. But anyway, the Cats, we're still breathing down the necks. Fortunately, due to a lot of these kind of complicated games that have played out so far, we're right in a position where we can still skip quickly up the ladder at this early stage. Let's hope to see that play out nice and soon. Next week, of course, we play the Ds, as we've alluded to already. So let's make sure we're getting really excited for that one. The game, GMHBA, so make sure you buckle in. It'd be good to have a game at home off the back of a couple, difficult couple difficult weeks. We can take the game back home, hopefully get the 4 points, hopefully smash a team and just get a bit of confidence going and play a full 4-quarter match. That game is Friday night at 7:40 GMHBA Stadium. So please make sure to get your tickets if you're able to. Get over and watch that one play out. For me, that is the first, or the night that my school holidays begin. I begin 2 weeks off that night, and I'm very, very excited to watch that game. I'll have to see if I can get along, actually. That'd be a good one to try and get to. I won't get to many games over the course of the season, but maybe a Friday night on my first night off for the holidays would be a good opportunity to go and see some football. We'll see. All right. Next up, we're going to get into some Nuff of the Week action. But before we get to all of that, let's take a word from our sponsor.
The Hoops Crew Media Network is proudly sponsored by Cyril Cook Florist. Visit them at Shop 1211 Leather Street in Breakwater. Phone them on 035 222 2244 or visit their website at www.cyrilcookflorist.com.au and use the offer code GOCATS in the voucher field at checkout to get 20% off your next online purchase.
Thank you, Cyril Cook Florist, as always, for your ongoing support of the Hoops Crew and all that we do. Now, we're going to get into some Nuff of the Week action. Like I've said, this is a pre-recorded video. I will note, and I wanted to do a better job of this, I recorded last week and I cut out the Cyril Cook sponsor so we didn't double up. I have forgotten or run out of time to do that this week. So bear with me as we are playing through it. I will skip through that ad when it plays again. We love you, Cyril Cook, but I don't want to be too obnoxious in the way that those ads are being played. So let's toss across to myself, recorded about an hour ago, Nuff of the Week time. Let's Crew, and today we're jumping into a topic that is plaguing football this week for Nuff of the Week. And this week, the umpires are the ones in the gun for a range of decisions that are occurring week after week after week through the 4 rounds of football that we've had so far. I'll count opening round for the sake of this. There is one particular element of the game that is ruining football right now, and the umpires just won't call it. And I'm calling on the umpires and the AFL to make some changes to improve the game we're playing. This week, we're talking about deliberate rushed boundary line decisions that are occurring this season, and aren't being called. There's been some absolute howlers so far this season. I am absolutely fed up with it. Now, I will admit, let's put this disclaimer out there now, that there are some from the recent Geelong and Brisbane game that weren't called that have, really riled me up more. So this has been a topic of discussion for a couple of weeks now, but the Geelong and Brisbane game and the lack of decisions made in that particular game, and there's a bit of bias that's obviously a factor here, is what's really set me off. But we're going to talk about that in great depth in this episode. But first, a word from our sponsor.
The Hoops Crew next on
the last
20% off your next online purchase.
Thank you, Cyril Cook Florist, as always, for all that you do in your support of the Hoops Crew and all that we get up to. Now, let's get into the topic at hand. The last 4 weeks of football, the standard has been quite high by and large. There have been a couple of dodgy games along the way. We can, of course, look at Port and Essendon, for example, recently. That was pretty rough. There's been some down moments from time to time. But one thing has gotten in the way of a few really important matches lately, and it's been the lack of decision around deliberate rush behinds. Meanwhile, there's been some other ones that were far more subtle, potentially not even deliberate at all, that have been called. The decision making has been quite horrendous, and the sort of rushed behind I'm talking about was kind of highlighted by Nick Dacos, and I'm not making this about Nick Dacos as much as many might want me to. But he's a very publicized example here where there's been players like this scenario that I'm going to show about Nick Dacos shortly, who have been, they've been trying to evade opposition, and then they've just happened to kind of wander over the line, and they've kind of, I guess, lost their orientation, and suddenly they're over the boundary line and will have to throw the ball in. But don't worry, it wasn't their fault because they just didn't know where the boundary line was. Bullshit. There's been quite a few of these. There was a few of these in the Geelong and Brisbane game. And the main reason why that one really irks me, outside of the fact that we're on the wrong side of the ledger, and I'll admit that there's a little bit of frustration there too. But the thing that really frustrated me the most about that particular game was the fact that it was a really wet game as it is. So as a result, there's a lot of stoppages, whether they're boundary throw-ins, whether they're balls up. There's a lot of stoppages already occurring in this particular game. So when there's a scenario where a player carries the ball over the line in the way that we'll highlight with Nick Dacos shortly, those need to be jumped on. And Brisbane were responsible for quite a few in that game. And I'm really frustrated about it. It's giving me the shits, but it has been occurring beyond just this one game as well. And there's been enough of a sample size now for me to start ranting about it. So let's take a look here at the scenario from the final. It was within the final 5 minutes of the the Western Bulldogs and Collingwood game from the other week. And then the scenario where, so there was a decision that was paid against Bailey Dale and then one that wasn't by Nick Dacos. And they are vastly different scenarios, vastly different outcomes. I want to go through it with you. So let's hit continue watching and we'll jump into it here. We might mute it actually because I don't want to get copyright struck along the way. All right. So we can see a Bailey Dale one here where it kind of ricochets off his chest and out it goes. That was considered deliberate. And he's stunned, absolutely stunned, deservedly so. This, note the scores, of course. The Dogs down by a point at this particular stage, and you're basically giving the Pies a free shot here. Meanwhile, Nick Dacos, look at this. Oh no, I'm trying to get away. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And there was a range of decisions just like this one. And again, I'm picking the Nick Dacos one because there's been breakout articles and it's a clip that's available that I can rely on. Others have, and I think a lot of that is because it's Nick Dacos, to be fair, which is why I want to stress I'm not making it about Nick Dacos. It's just that is a readily available clip for me to use. And a perfect example of what I'm talking about. There was no attempt from Nick Dacos to keep the ball in the field of play in this scenario, nor was there from a range of Brisbane players last night, and nor was there from a range of other players throughout the course of the season. And this, I'm just trying to evade. I'm turning my butt. Oh, I'm out of bounds. Throw in. It's bullshit. The players are smarter than that. We've not had these sorts, like very rarely, and I'm talking about, players getting disoriented here. It's a very rare thing for a player to get so disoriented that they kick the ball the opposite direction. You might see it once a season. They know where the lines are. They know where they're at. They know how this game is being played. They've got peripheral vision. Nick Dacos in that clip knew exactly where the boundary line was and knew that if he swung to his left, hard to his left, even though he could put up this ruse that, oh no, I'm trying to tuck it in, I'm trying to keep it in the field of play, that it was never going to remain inside the field of play, despite how it might look, and they're going to ball it in. And they did. And it happened in the Geelong and Brisbane game. It's happened in several other games throughout the course of this season. And I've had enough of it because, and I'll go back to Geelong and Brisbane here, not because of the result, but because of the spectacle. There's already enough stoppages. It's already, the ball's being thrown up enough. The ball is being thrown in enough as it is in a game like that, let alone when there are very clearly deliberate attempts to just carry the ball out of bounds like we saw last night. And I would implore the umpiring department and the AFL to squash it now. If you've got space and you carry the ball over the line, regardless of whether you're turning or trying to turn around, chuck a U-turn or not, that's deliberate. You've had the opportunity. You have made the conscious decision to turn. And as such, you've gone out of bounds. Call it and you watch. It'll disappear from our game really, really quickly because it's such a simple one to adjudicate. It's such an obvious one to everyone watching on TV and probably in the crowd as well. So just start calling it. I think they're a little bit too scared in some of these cases, and I kind of get it. But then you see scenarios like that Bailey Dale and Nick Dacos one where Bailey Dale, look, I mean, maybe there was a hint of, like, he probably wasn't super keen to try and keep the ball in the field of play, but you can visibly see it ricochet off his chest. Meanwhile, Nick Dacos, clean possession, holding the ball, runs over the line. That sort of stuff's got to be stamped out as quickly as possible. That's where. Yep, I couldn't agree with me more on that one. What an insightful host. All right, let's move on from Nuff of the week, where I was a bit of a nuff by using the phrase balls up in that capacity. It's time for some Q&A. So we've got a whole range of different topics that I have seen being kind of spoken about in the comments. Of course, we do have the comment here from Graham, where the Cats and Ford will officially be celebrating a 100-year partnership this Friday night, and our team will be wearing the special jersey. It's a massive occasion. Yeah, I guess. I'm not a car guy. I'm not a Ford guy. But of course, the Ford partnership has been a very long-standing one. The Ford brand has been very, very good to the Geelong Football Club over 100 years. And I think it's worth acknowledging it for sure. Do we need a special dedicated jumper? I would say not. I'm curious to what the AFL really thinks about something like this. Considering I believe still their premier partner is Toyota. Are they still... I'm not going to say. I'm pretty sure the Toyota is still one of their lead sponsors, right? This is perhaps more obnoxious than usual, than just having the normal badge on the logo. But anyway, 100 days, 100 games, 100 days. Rightly asked, does everyone attend? Sorry, anyone who attends get a Ford? I'll become a Ford guy if I'm going to get a free car, and then I won't become a Ford guy when I sell that car. But anyway. Jackie says, if it annoys the AFL, I'm all for it. That's fair too. 100 games, 100 days. Also shouts out that Source Mary would love to play with today's interpretation. Absolutely. Or lack of interpretation, really. So thank you for that little bit of feedback when it comes to Nuff of the Week. Now, I will shout out for those watching on YouTube tonight. Ben has set a super chat goal that is live for the next hour and 20 minutes, which is well beyond when the show is going to finish. But for the next hour and 20 minutes, it takes only one person to kick in $2 via the super chat function tonight. And I will host a post-game live in the near future. It'll be a Paul James takeover. And of course, we know that when I host post-game live, a typical post-game live that might range from an hour and a half to 2 hours, suddenly balloons well beyond 3 hours because I don't shut up. The guests, I give you as much time as you want to talk, and becomes a bit of a marathon. So consider, if you haven't already, drop a super chat on this video. We'll pin your comment. We'll celebrate you. We'll make a giant fuss, and I will take over a post-game live in the near future. All right. In the meantime, though, comment section. Let me know, what topics do you want to discuss? We've, of course, got the VFL result and some players really starting to kind of stamp some authority on that competition who maybe deserve to be playing in the first. We do have the Tom Stewart, Reece Stanley, Mitch Duncan, Sam De Koning. Like, there's a whole conversation there about some players who are, coming back, potentially Sean Manor, coming back in as well. Some players who might be at risk. Want to hear your thoughts on those big topics as well. And of course, anything else within the AFL system. I am very keen to hear from you tonight. After starting the show in white hot form with some Mitch Nevitt and Mitch Hardy comments, Brendan has disappeared. I don't know if Brendan, Declan and Bianca are there. Love to hear some of your thoughts, some of your questions or comments. We'll pin that up. But let's start with 100 games, 100 days. Who says? Let's say Manor comes in, who goes out? Yeah, it's a pretty tricky one, right? Let me bring up our team from the other night, because I'm going to work on the assumption that there are two inclusions, and I believe Manor will be one, and I believe Tom Stewart will be the other as a starting point. But there is that very reasonable question from before about Stanley and Sam De Koning as well. When I look at that list and I'm thinking about players, in and out of form, those sorts of things, I think Jack Bowes saved himself with his performance on the weekend. I am seeing in the comments from Jackie and 100 Games, 100 Days, who both shout out Clark. I do feel like Clark or Closey will be the ones in the gun in this scenario. I feel like it's probably Jai Clark, but I'm not at all disappointed with, and I have seen some comments about him. Like he needs to, I guess, remain relevant in the game for longer, but he also still only played about 60% of game time. So to come away with 13 disposals from that, I think it was 13. It was something close to that. 13 odd disposals from that time. Kicked a goal, was really physical when the opportunities emerged as well. Let me double check that number, but I'm pretty sure it was about 60% game time. It was one of the lower figures for the Cats on the night. Advanced. Trying to find the figures. When I've got the screen shrunk down, it gets a little bit harder. Where is it? Oh, there we go. It was just chopped off because I had it shrunk down. Where is he? Where is he? Come on. Come on. I'm just stumbling and bumbling in the dark here. Jai Clark played 65% of game time. I thought he looked pretty good for the time that he spent on the ground. Ted Closey as well. So, like, I think it'd be a pretty harsh decision to cut either of them, and it wouldn't be a form-based thing. But I think you're going to have an unfortunate out in this scenario. Someone's got to make way for them. Ted Closey got 13 disposals, 221 meters gained from 67 disposals, and again was quite physical as well. I'm going to say that. I'm going to say Closey might be the one, which would be unfortunate because I think he was fantastic last week. So we'll see. What else? What other suggestions coming through? Just looking at the AFL injury list for all clubs. As per usual, health is the main player. The clubs at the top of the ladder don't have many. Ours is looking ugly. Yes, but I would say that, and I'll double check our list just so I'm not speaking out of my ass too much. But I would also say that the majority of the players on that list aren't ultra significant ones for us. Like, they're not make or break season sort of players. So Bailey Smith is obviously, like, I look at the list and it's obviously been updated. It needs to be updated. Sorry. Bailey Smith is back. Tom Stewart will be back. Jack Martin being listed as a test is really interesting considering he's still not, playing at the moment. That's a fascinating one, but I don't think of that one as an ugly one when he hasn't even for us. He's kind of a nothing thing for us right now, who could potentially have huge upside, but is not in at the moment. Jake Cole-Jasny is now getting really close, and I think he's going to be really valuable coming into defense, and certainly then allows for a Tom Stewart when he returns to be uncaged a bit as well, or a Lawson Humphreys, or a Zach Guthrie. The list goes on there. Busey, I think, is a really important one. Now, he's 6 to 10 weeks away. That is... Oh, sorry, Renee, I didn't realize that I'd kind of answered your Jake Cole-Jasny one. But yeah, he's listed as a week, 1 to 2 weeks on the report at the moment. I might quickly screen share this one. Hang on, give me one moment. Screen share. Health Hub. And boom. There it is. So there's our health report at the moment. So Jake Cole-Jasny is obviously, 1 to 2 weeks. That's going to be down to 0 to 1, possibly even a test. Jed Buse, I think, for me, is a really big one because of his ability to clamp down on those small forwards. I think when he's available, that's where O'Shea Mullen, and I thought Mullen had a pretty great game on the weekend. I mentioned in the match review, if that wasn't his best game for the Cats, then it was really, really close, and he did a fantastic job. I think he's learned a lot of lessons from what hasn't worked against the Higginses and what's his name, Murphy Reeds of the last couple of weeks. I think he learned a lot from that and did a really great job on the weekend. But he would be the one for me that as soon as Jed Buse is good to go, Jed Buse comes in for him. Beyond that, obviously, the Tanner Bruin situation, I think he would be a walk-up. Him and Cam Guthrie would be walk-up selections for the Cats if they're available, but we're going to be waiting a little while, I think, certainly on Cam Guthrie and presumably for Tanner Bruin as well. But anyone who's watched this show a bit knows that I will not be talking any further about Tanner Bruin at the moment. What else have we got? Ollie Dempsey, I assume this is in relation to who would come out. No, I'm still... He hasn't been shooting the lights out. He hasn't been the rising star winner that we saw last year, but I think he's still doing a solid enough job at the moment. And I don't see there being any scenario that would have him removed from the 23 at the moment. But you do also mention that Mitch never came on as the sub, so he'll have to make way. Have to make way. Look, there's merit to that. Logically, it's the most logical one, right? If he's the one that you don't want in this particular case to spend as much time on the ground as possible, then he's perhaps the most obvious one to cut. But I think for a game against the D's, where he's got a bit more of that physical size over a Ted Closey and especially a Jai Clark, I would probably think he's the more likely of those three to remain in, at least right now. Dempsey's a goal sneak. He's important for us as long as he's accountable. I mean, the number of times he got out the back during that Brisbane game. What did he kick? Did he kick a goal in the end? I think he kicked one goal, but there was he was really important in a few others, and there was a few other scenarios where the ball just didn't quite make it to him. I certainly remember one that Jeremy Cameron, and it was kind of a team screw up in this particular case. But Ollie Demps kicked one goal, one. There was a kind of bit of a lapse from the team there that allowed Brisbane get possession once again, but Ollie Dempsey had an absolute field in front of him and behind him. They just needed to clear it over the top. He missed out on the goal because of that. So I'm pretty happy with where he's at. I would love to see his 10 to 12 disposals get closer to 12 to 15. I think he's so creative on the field that he could add a lot there, but I'm happy with where he's at. Tyson Stengel had an unusually quiet one. I did see his name get shouted out there. I don't think there's any way that we remove him. This is a guy who kicks 40 to 50 goals a season since joining the Cats. He'll remain in that team for quite some time. Any other thoughts regarding the Geelong-Brisbane game, regarding the broader AFL, regarding my Nuff of the Week that I've put together? Would love to hear all of your thoughts about those topics and continue to discuss those. So please throw them at me. While we continue. Oh, does Stanley? Yeah. So, Renee, that question came up just a little while ago about Stanley, and I do think that's a distinct possibility. Sam De Koning came off and was the sub, was a little bit proppy and injured. Maybe we give him a rest, or maybe even strategically. I mean, Reece Stanley kicked 2 goals, 39 hit-outs. He's built some nice form in the VFL, and Reece Stanley's the sort of player as well that when he gets a bit of a run on, when he finds form, he tends to retain that form until an injury comes along. He's also got a decent sort of track record against Max Gawn as well. So there's plenty of reasons for him to potentially come in this week. It'll be a really interesting one. But it could be, as Renee says, based on that, it could be as many as 3. Tom Stewart, Sean Manor, Reece Stanley. And I really struggle to think now who would be the players to come out. Sam De Koning, if he's injured, would be one. I can't even, who comes out for Tom Stewart? You wouldn't want to take it. Connor O'Sullivan is the one you would think of by default, but, in terms of like for likes and those sort of things, but he's in white hot form. I wouldn't want to get rid of him. Maybe this is where O'Shea Mullen does come out, even though he's played perhaps his best game for the Cats. Maybe he's the one. I'm not too sure. And then and then potentially a Clark or a Closey makes way for Sean Manor to come back. So we'll see how that goes. Danger. How do we predict his breaks? I assume you mean getting a game off from here. There's Lucas. There we go. We'll talk about the Sheffield Shield in a moment. Congratulations, though, on the win. Danger, how do we predict his breaks will go this year? I assume you mean, kind of getting a week off to rest or something like that, the way he gets managed. I don't know. I'm wondering if this forward line policy is their way of managing him. That said, he's so combative and kind of self-destructive at times that he's going to try and, will himself into every contest anyway. And maybe he needs to be protected from himself from time to time as well. Obviously, he did come off with a fair stream of blood from the noggin late in the piece. But yeah, I'd imagine he'll get some breaks. I don't think they'll be perhaps as plentiful as we thought they would have been now that we know about this forward line move. But maybe every 6 to 7 to 8 weeks, he might only miss 2 to 3 games for the year, I think. What else have we got here? Oh, there we go. Yeah, pretty sure it's stated he won't be playing a full season. Yeah, I'd imagine that's the case as well. I am worried about Jez's form. Like I said, he kicked 4, 3 of them in junk time against Freo, and then has been kind of ineffective since. Now, admittedly, the ball wasn't getting to him in the game against St Kilda, and he went chasing it and did a pretty good job of chasing it. He just, the ball couldn't get into the forward line. So I don't necessarily blame him too much for that one. But the effort this week against Brisbane was pretty lacking. The Clark, I'm okay with where he's at. It's an interesting one that people are kind of speculating on his foot. Now, if it's because we're bringing in a Manor who's, I guess, more proven, more established, got the body for it, I get that. But I wouldn't necessarily be dropping Jai Clark for form. I think he really found himself in the game against St Kilda. And from, limited game time, he played 60, I think, I'll double check that number again. But where are we? Time on ground. Jordan Clark. Where are you, Jordan Clark? Sorry, Jai Clark, I should say. Jordan Clark, sorry, that's a bit triggering for people. He played the fourth fewest number of minutes of anyone on the ground for the day. And that's ahead of Kai Lohman, who got injured, Bruce Revel, who was the sub, and Mitch Nevitt, who was the sub. So I actually think his output was pretty solid. I've got no problems with where he's at. That said, like I said, when we're trying to improve our team, then he perhaps is the logical one to drop at the moment. But I think he's developing quite nicely. I genuinely think he's developing quite nicely and would have no problems if he remained in the team. But I think he's probably the obvious one at the moment. Jez looks like he'd rather be on the farm. I think he just wants to be making some YouTube content at the moment. Can we get sticky gloves for Neil? He's dropping a few, but also I didn't realize this. I hadn't Graham, can you clarify this one? I haven't seen this. Is there footage of him in a moon boot at the moment, or from either post game or today or something like that? Has he been spotted in a moon boot today? Because he played it out like he tweaked that ankle pretty early on and then played out the game, and it didn't look like he was limited in terms of whether he was running straight lines, deviating from a line. It seemed like he was sore. But it didn't seem like it necessarily limited him too much. I think he was just beaten by a better opponent for sure, and dropped a few. He's going to get there though. Conditions didn't suit the Talls anyway, but we could see that at the other end for Brisbane, like Day, Hipwood, and Logan Morris didn't do a lot themselves either. So it wasn't and even Darcy Fort, spent a bunch of time up forward for them and didn't do a hell of a lot either. Jeremy Cameron didn't do much. Like, I'm not too worried about Neil's form from that game. I am worried about this little ankle injury or whatever it is. I'm concerned about the moon boot. It is something to look at though for him. He has dropped a few chest marks of late too, which has not been ideal. All right, now let's cycle back to Lucas, who's jumped in here. Coach Lucas, 2025 Sheffield Shield winners, avoided Nuff of the week, put the P45 back in the draw. I wasn't going to nuff you for getting ahead of your skis there, but you were for a while. And surely you must admit that when you had to get a record fourth innings total to win that game, you must have been shitting bricks. It's a good thing you've got Alex Carey, who's in form like few others in the game at international level right now. Him and Sanger got the job done very nicely. They were fantastic. And celebrate long and hard. It's been a whole ordeal, right down to the very end with the AFL and what they did around the final. So celebrate long, hard, and hopefully your head is in a good place by the time you go back to work. Congratulations on the win. Graham, I am looking to you. You've popped that comment in there about Neil's leg in the moon boot. Please let me know what you've seen or heard, because that's a really fascinating bit of news that I wasn't aware of as of yet. If pulls up okay, DeConing forward to help Neil is a good option. Potentially, I worry that we get. Look, I'm not overly worried about the potency of Melbourne's forward line. Certainly in terms of Talls. Van Rooyen's good, but and going to be a jet of the competition, but he's still developing. I don't think they have a lot of depth in that area, and that's been a weakness for them for a while. Yeah. I don't know. I'd probably still rather him go defense than kind of float up forward. Or maybe him and Stanley, they do kind of play a genuine two-ruck thing, and Blitzarves can then go off the wing. Like maybe instead of it being DeConing and Blitzarves, it's DeConing and Stanley, and those two kind of rotate amongst themselves. So Blitzarves can play off the wing, and maybe as an extra tall midfielder, those like that maybe really frees up Mark Blitzarves to get back to his best role, which is really like the full-blown utility. That could be the scenario in that case. Now we start getting very tall in that scenario, but I don't think we lose for speed. Stanley is really quick. De Koning's pretty mobile. And of course Mark Blitzarves is, well, everything's been said about Mark Blitzarves and his athleticism over the years. Yeah, 3 for 31. You got to admit you were scared. Yeah, it was pretty rough, but congratulations again on the win. There's our update. So it's only precautionary until they do scans. Hopefully not bad. It was on SEN radio this afternoon. Cool. Thank you for that update in that regard. Myers and Smith deaths was not great at all. Thank you, Magnus, for I guess echoing the sentiment that I shared both in the review video and then earlier on in the show tonight. 25 and 22 disposals for the both of them. That looks good at face value, but I don't think they were a brilliant, especially Bailey Smith's. I don't think his 25 were overly effective. He also got run down a couple of times. He looked like he maybe needed another week after his little calf tweak. Just didn't quite catch the speed of the game. And of course, the elements didn't help, and that would have slowed things down a bit too. But yeah, I wasn't impressed with Bailey Smith. Myers had some good moments, but yeah, I think he too struggled a bit. All right, any other questions at all? We've ticked over an hour for the show tonight at this point. There's been some really great conversations so far. We have gone through the full run sheet for the night. So if you've got any last questions, please don't hesitate to ask those questions now. But otherwise, we will start to wind things down. Killer Carpenter. Myers just doesn't defend good enough. Zorko made him pay going the other way. Look, Zorko is one of the best in the business in that particular regard. I think the thing that the forwards, and it's not a Myers exclusive thing here, I think the thing that the forwards struggled to do in that second half was remain dangerous, essentially. If I get overly simplistic about it, they didn't remain dangerous in the second half. Now, the ball was struggling to get up there, but if you can get yourself in some dangerous positions, you make those defenders accountable. You stop Harris Andrews from floating across. I nearly called him Ryan Harris because we're talking about, cricket at the moment. You stop Harris Andrews from floating across and spoiling the ball because you draw him away. There was that moment that I think about in the fourth quarter when danger went really deep, and you saw Harris Andrews. He couldn't leave. He had to be that second man to interfere with Paddy Dangerfield, and he was begging someone to come over, take danger so that he could spill off the contest. There wasn't enough of those kinds of scenarios. And of course, it was Paddy Dangerfield that made him accountable. He's our captain, and he's an absolute ripper. And was the lead goal scorer on the night. I don't think we did a good enough job as a team in the second half of getting in dangerous positions. We also, as defenders and midfielders, bringing the ball inside 50 or even into the forward half, we started just playing, straight lines. What we did so well in the first half is that we might, play down one flank and then suddenly cross it. And I don't mean like a set play and you start chipping it around to kind of move the defenders around. I mean, you'd kind of charge one way and then kick it on a 45, hard to your left to someone leading into some space. We did a lot of that. It's what, what's his name? Bruce did with his first kick of the game when he came on as the sub. He, dropped the same maneuver and it worked perfectly for them. We stopped doing that in the second half. We weren't getting in dangerous positions. We weren't creating dangerous opportunities when we were going forward. And so it made the likes of Myers look worse and the likes of Zorko look a lot better because we became incredibly predictable. Albeit we had a lot less, but we started to look really predictable. And that was the problem for us in that regard. Lucas, as much as he has been in bad form, and I wouldn't quite go as far as say he's doing more harm than good, there is no scenario where they, regardless of whether you're right or wrong, there is no scenario where they're dropping Jeremy Cameron to the seconds. Marcus asked who is closest to debut. I mean, right now, George Stevens. For my mind, George Stevens is the one that is absolutely smashing the door down. He has been in white-hot form, and we talk about these players who, we talk about the fact that we're struggling to win the ball at the contest. Give me a second as I bring up the numbers from the VFL game, though if I recall, I don't think this is where I really need Jake from the chaps here. I'm pretty sure the AFL website doesn't list the clearance figures. I am going to check it to be sure. to be sure. I didn't realize that the Cats and the Casey Demons have a curtain raiser on Friday. 3:50 start. That's fantastic. Let me go check the Cats and the Bull Ants game, though. I'm pretty sure, like I said, that clearance numbers don't get recorded. Oh, hang on. They do. Okay. This is thankfully echoing my sentiment. So we spoke about George Stevens before with 34 disposals, and that is absolutely fantastic. But where is Geelong's biggest weakness right now? It's at the clearance and our inability to win it at the coalface. Here's a little bit of extra texture for the George Stevens game. 34 disposals, 12 kicks and 22 handballs. I would have liked for that ratio to be a little more balanced, but 6 tackles and 9 clearances. He led the game in the clearance tally. This is the guy that needs to come in. If there is someone to debut, to your point, Magnus, 9 clearances from 34 disposals and 6 tackles. George Stevens is the one I want to see debut nice and soon. Next up. The comments just started to fire up. We do have a tough month coming up. Absolutely. So the Melbourne one, you would want to hope, is an opportunity for us to regain some form and kind of get a bit of dignity back into the scoreline at 2-2. But then we travel to Adelaide for gather round. We have Hawthorn for Easter Monday. It's a tough block of games, and I'm pretty sure there was even a tough opponent sometime after that as well. I'll check that fixture. Carlton after that, who might be a soft kill right now, but also they might have been stung back into some form. The Pies after that, the Giants after that, the Power, the Dogs. It's not just a tough month. It's almost a tough 2 months, really. So we've got to take these opportunities and get the wins where we can get them, starting with the Ds this Friday night. Oh, sorry. I think there was maybe more to that comment. But when we get our full defense and center line back, the Cats will peak towards the mid to latter stages of the season. Absolutely. That's why I don't want people to get too carried away at this really early stage of the season. It is round 3. And we've also been, Freo, we dominated for 3 quarters, absolutely smashed them for 3 quarters, and had a debutant kind of make a mockery of us for about 5 minutes. Otherwise, I would have been fine with that. The St Kilda game, we obviously played scintillating football for a quarter and a half and just had that. The problem I've got is the laps. The laps for the first, half, for the first, 2.5 quarters against St Kilda. The quarter laps against the Lions here. We just need to rectify this whole curbing the opposition's momentum thing. That's all it is. And I think all of that comes down to the coach's box and the willingness or potential reluctance to shift some magnets around in those scenarios we look at St Kilda. So I'll go back to the worm here for the St Kilda game. They kicked 2 goals out of the blocks. No big deal. They kicked 3 late in the first quarter there. And my first thinking is, all right, danger, get in the middle. But instead, they kicked, what was that? Oh no, 4 goals apiece in the second term. 4 goals 4 to 4 goals 2. We want to be not just breaking even or losing by a few points. We want to be actually making inroads into that scoreline when you get jumped late in the quarter. Oh, sorry, they kicked 4 goals in a row to end the first quarter, I should say. You need to, it's somewhere after that second or third, you need to go, all right, let's put someone in the midfield. Let's course correct here. But we didn't do it until way too late. Same sort of story here against Brisbane. Let me bring up that worm again so I can double check it. But what was it, like 5 goals in a row? They kicked. Will Ashcroft kicked 1 to end the second, and then 2, 3, 4, 5 consecutive goals in. 5 consecutive goals before we hit back, and really, after the first one in that third quarter, you go, okay, we've now just kicked 2 in a row. We've had Will Ashcroft and then Levi Ashcroft kick consecutive goals. They also had a couple shots on goal before that missed, Lachie Neale and Zach Bailey. You go, okay, they're getting some momentum going here. What can we do as a club to nip that in the bud? Danger goes in. Tom Atkins, get back on Lockie Neal. Those sorts of moves. I mean, he should never have come off Lockie Neal in the first place, but it wasn't Tom Atkins' fault. He would be doing what he's told. We need to be more proactive in our response to scenarios. I say proactive, but it's inherently a reactive thing. But we need to be willing to get out in front of him and go, okay, no, something's changed. Let's change it up ourselves. Let's also flip the script. And if that doesn't work, we'll try something. Like sometimes teams get hot, and no matter what you throw at them, you just can't you can't fix it. And I get that happens sometimes. That's okay. I would be totally okay if Geelong went and wheeled out a whole host of different options and, tossed Jeremy Cameron in the midfield to get his hands on the ball and there's a whole host of different things to change the game. I'm not saying Jeremy Cameron in the midfield's thing, but I'm kind of, talking about an outlandish example here. We throw a bunch of magnets around. We shake things up to try and shift the game again. But when we persist with the same strategy for a whole quarter and we have 5 consecutive goals kicked against us and we go scoreless in that time, that's frustrating. And that becomes a coach's box problem. And I'm not saying Chris Scott is a problem. I love Chris Scott as a coach. But I think he's willing to stick to the plan for a bit too long. And I think that's what needs to be looked at. What have we got here in the comments? All 3 games so far, it's been the third quarter. I wouldn't say that was the case in the St Kilda one. The St Kilda one was where we started to win it back a little bit. Probably took 10 minutes into that quarter, but then we really started to gain them scoreboard ascendancy back. But I still agree with the general sentiment. The third quarter, the premiership quarter, is where we're kind of struggling a little bit at the moment. The pressure's dropping off. I think Chris Scott lets his players off the hook publicly compared to other coaches. I mean, yes, but also I'm not worried about what he says publicly. I'm more concerned about what he says behind the scenes. And of course, we won't know what is said behind the scenes. I've got no problem with a coach sticking up for their players through thick and thin. But yeah, I think what we need to be looking at is kind of how the coach's box is responding to a team catching fire and how we arrest that. Because at the moment, nothing seems to be changing until we get to a change of quarter, and that's not good enough. We struggle in the third quarter in a lot of games. Yeah, we have historically. I would say 2 out of 3 that's been the case so far. So, and we weren't super convincing in that third quarter against the Saints either, even though we did start to gain some ascendancy. Yeah, I think it's a bit of an issue at the moment. They need to look at the 4 quarter performance. They haven't delivered one yet, and the club will admit that. I don't think Chris Scott would hide from that if the question was asked of him as to why this is happening either. But it's time to course correct. It's time to show in a game against Melbourne here where it should, in theory, based on how they're going, be a soft kill. Go for it. Smash them. Full 4 quarters. And that's where your additions of Tom Stewart and Sean Manor, I think, really, really help. Just more experienced heads who know how to, kind of push through helps. But I do want to see the coaches get out in front of a scenario when a team catches fire and kicks a couple goals, change something, fix it. Again, I would be okay with a loss if you've gone and thrown the kitchen sink at it and just nothing worked. You just got beaten by a better team on the day. But at the moment, they're taking too long. They're letting teams back into the game, and then they go and lose as a result. That's what frustrates me. All right. I think the comments are starting to slow down a little bit. We're kind of hitting on the same topics. I missed Graham's comment in there. Ollie Wiltshire has to be close to debut as he's been on fire, and I do agree Stevens is a chance too. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, about the Hawks. We've got a couple of weeks before the Hawks, but we really have had the Hawks measure for some time now. Can see us rising for Easter Monday for sure and reminding the football world that we are still right there. Look, I think that is the occasion. We do like to get up for an occasion. I would have liked to think that was, a prelim final replay. And we did technically. We just fell asleep at the wheel for a while. But yeah, I think making a statement against the old enemy, there's no better time. But let's see if we can do it even sooner against the Ds. All right. Yes. So, sorry. Thank you, Graham. I did miss that initially, but yeah, Ollie Wiltshire must be close. I think he's been doing a great job as well. But I think the problem for him is he is yet another small forward, and I wouldn't necessarily be picking him again ahead of Stengel, Brian Myers, Brad Close, Ollie Dempsey at the moment. And that's, I think, the problem for him. I'd love to be proven wrong, but I think right now that's oh my God, I'm clicking. Oh, it happens. Yeah, when a new comment comes in, just as I go to click something, it ends disastrously. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think that's his problem at the moment, whereas George Stevens going into the midfield, there's a bit more opportunity there, I would say. And I think that's what probably pushes him higher up the list for me right now. It's great to see you jump in, Jack. I admit we are about to end things for the night, so please don't hesitate to go and check the backlog of the show tonight and see everything that's been said. I'm going to check to see if a super chat has come in because, like I said, the super chat tonight, we only need one person in the in the comments section tonight to toss $2 at us for a super chat. And if you do so, I will be hosting post game live. If no one does it, I'm going to walk away pretty sad, assuming that, okay, everyone prefers Ben to me. And we can't really have that. Can we? If you got a couple bucks, toss super chat in there. We'll make a big fuss about you as well. We should, but also I will kick Ben out of the hosting chair for post game live and take over. And you know that show will go from an hour and a half to 2 hours. Suddenly will become 3+ hours long. We can take that to the bank. As long as you show up, I'll keep chatting to you. Yeah, Wiltshire is the travelling emergency. He does show promising signs. He's clearly there or thereabouts. But yeah, to my same point about that I made there with Graham, I feel like it's probably going to be harder for him to crack the team simply due to the nature of the position he would be entering in. But again, would love to be proven wrong. All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns before we bring this show to a close for the night? Again, if you've tuned in late, as a number of you have, and I'm thrilled to have you, please don't hesitate to go and watch the replay. We've got Nuff of the Week there where we talk all about some of the boundary umpire, the deliberate rush that isn't being called at the moment, really. That's a topic for discussion. We go through the game against Brisbane. We go through the other matches of the round. There's a whole lot there for people to go check out. So if you've tuned in late tonight, go check out all that we've spoken about tonight. Last comment here from Jack Phipps. Throw the magnets around. Myers in the middle, maybe. I can see Wiltshire playing at some point. Yeah. We were discussing, the magnets, and I think that's going to be a really important thing. Oh, Rob has just dropped the super chat. Bow, 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 bow. All right, Ben, you're out of the hosting chair. Oh, and Lucas is done as well. Oh my God. Time to host a post-game live. See you on Friday night. I'll chat with Ben about which one works best because there are, and now we've just had 2. Thank you both. You're both incredible. Lucas has probably just got money and everything to throw around left, right, and centre right now because he's still celebrating the South Australia Sheffield Shield win. But thank you both very, very much for your contributions, not just tonight, but on an ongoing basis. You're both wonderful individuals, and we love having you on All Things Hoops Crew. I'll be hosting Postgame Live. Whether it is this Friday or not is up for discussion. Ben and I will have to have a bit of a talk. But I'm feeling awkward about this because we've, like I mentioned it early on, it didn't come through. Now we've had some, and I'm about to bounce for the night, but 2 weeks now for Rob. The next 2. We'll see. No, so it definitely can't be the next 2. So this leads to some scheduling stuff that I want to talk about before we wrap up tonight, because we normally wrap up the show talking about what is to come for the week. I'll give you a bit of a rundown as to where we're at because it's a bit complicated. Oh, hang on. Here we go. I had a massive bet on Sportsbet for the Shield. We were paying $1.90 and then I went $250. Jesus. Oh, you got enough super chats for the rest of the season then, right? Let's talk about the schedule for the week. So Monday night, Ben is back with the tipping point. He is back. He's in good health again. He will continue to ramble about a system that makes no sense, but probably still works out okay for him anyway. 8:30 Monday night for that one. The Chaps on Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. The Chaps Cats tune in for their review of the Geelong and Brisbane game. And here on Wednesday is where things get complicated. On Thursday would be the normal time for me to do this show. But as a teacher, I have parent-teacher interview night that night and cannot make the show as a result. It'll run well and truly too late in that particular scenario. So we're going to be going live with the Paul James Show, the normal preview episode, a day earlier, which is kind of fitting anyway because we've got a Friday night game. It gives it some time to breathe regardless. Wednesday at 8:30 will be the Paul James Show, as well as at 8:30, the Twos. The Twos is, people have had the opportunity to check out the VFL focuses that Jake has been putting together. That has normally been a Patreon exclusive item. We've been putting it out there to kind of show people what it's all about. That one is returning behind the Patreon paywall beginning this Wednesday. So if you want to continue to check out the Twos and what Jake has been doing there, you'll need to become a patron. Consider the 7-day free trial if you want to see what it's all about. And then it costs you $5 to $6 a month to stick with us on that tier and get access to exclusive content like the Twos and my scratching post videos, extended content. There's long extended versions of the Chaps Chat Cats and a whole bunch more as well. So consider checking that out. But Wednesday night will be the Paul James Show, as well as for patrons, the VFL focus with the Twos. Friday night, post-game live, off the back of the Melbourne game, and that will probably be me. Now. I'm gonna double check some messages with Ben, but I will take hosting responsibilities for the. You're a dead set clown. I don't even have Ninja Turtle pajamas, and I'm not going to go buying any if someone goes and puts a super chat in. So let's make sure that's crystal clear now. I am not going to buy Ninja Turtles pajamas and wear them, even if someone throws $100 in as a super chat. You can bite me. Anyway, so throw as much money as you want, Rob or Lucas. Go for your life. I'm not going to do it. Which I don't know. Like, I'm not making any promises, so there's nothing legal you can throw at me. I'm taking post-game live on Friday night after the Geelong and Melbourne game, which I guess as a result means I probably can't go to the game now, right? Well done. You ruined my opportunity to go to the football, all of you. Unless you want to... he's just dropped another $2. There's too much energy here. And then, of course, Sunday, we'll be back again with the Paul James Show, reviewing the game. You will have heard me speak about the game far too much because you will get post-game live on Friday night. You'll get my review video on the Saturday morning. That's the normal non-live version, the pre-recorded one. And then on Sunday night, the Paul James Show to debrief on not just that game, but the round as a whole. Hopefully, we are talking about a win. Thank you to all of you who've kicked in a few bucks tonight, Rob and Lucas times 2, for your contributions tonight. It's been hugely appreciated. We'll start to wind things down there because we don't need more people throwing money out there that they don't need to be spending on us. Thank you though, guys. If you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like this video, tell your friends and family, get our content out there. We want to reach more Geelong fans and neutrals as well. I've been seeing a few neutrals, especially some Hawthorn supporters, dropping in the comments lately. And it's all, even the Hawthorn supporters. It's been really constructive stuff. So very much look forward to having those conversations either live, like many of you have tonight, or in the comment sections on the pre-recorded videos. Check all of it out. We'd really appreciate that. And spread the word. We want to continue to grow. I've spoken about commenting. Please make sure to drop those comments. Or when you are live in the future for the Paul James Show, for post-game live, whatever it is, make sure to share those thoughts in the comment sections as well. We've spoken about Super Chats. Sorry, we'll move on past that one. You can find me on the social media platforms, Twitter or X or whatever Elon wants to call it. I think he sold it again in the last couple of days. Instagram and Blue Sky, you'll find me at Paul James Games. Looking forward to chat. It's a big week for me this week with football content as well as the Nintendo Switch 2 being revealed this week. And I have a lot of work to do in that space as well. Thank you, as always, to our sponsor, Cyril Cook Florist, and to all of our patrons. I mentioned before, obviously, we've got the 7-day free trial thing there, but there's 34 of you that are currently patrons of the Hoops Crew, and we cannot thank each and every one of you enough. Your support is huge as we continue to grow what we're doing. We continue, the new lighting, all the things that I've been able to use this year is thanks to the money that's coming from our patrons. It helps improve the product. We are so thankful for what we're doing, and we hope that you're enjoying the benefits from it, whether you're a patron or not. These people are wonderful. We love you. All right, we will wrap. Oh, will you be playing, mate? I had Assassin's Creed Shadows for about 2.5 weeks before it came out. I'm already finished with Assassin's Creed Shadows. I love Assassin's Creed Shadows. So yeah, fantastic game. I don't even know what game I'm going to shout out on Wednesday night. It'll probably have to be something from the Nintendo Switch event, I'm imagining. But stay tuned for my game of the week then on Wednesday when I discuss that too. All right, that is all. Thank you everyone for having tuned in tonight. Very much appreciated as always. The Cats went down by 9 points. It's disappointing, but there are lots of positives I think for us all to still be discussing. I look forward to seeing you again for what day is it today? On Wednesday for the Paul James Show, and then again on Friday for Post Game Live, and then again for the Paul James Show on Sunday night. You're going to get far too much of me, lots of live chat, lots of conversations. I'm looking forward to doing it. Thank you everyone for watching. Remain Geelong strong, and I'll see you later.